The kits of both Miyu and Emiya were recently announced on the JP side of Grand Summoners. The update is going to be coming at around the 12th, at around like 5 in the morning Eastern Standard Time, but by the time I post this, it should be up, I believe. Starting with the kits though, Miyu is a Dark Human and her slots are going to be a 6-star Magic, 5-star Physical, and 4-star Magic and 4-star Defense. They aren't terrible slots, they're pretty mediocre to be honest, but needing to LB7 her for her defense slot is unfortunate though, as the 4-star Magic isn't really that great to be honest. For her arts, it does 25,000 dark damage magic, and for 20 seconds, it reduces the enemy's dark resist by 50%. Pretty potent amount of dark resist that'll allow dark units to do a lot more damage. For her true arts, it does 90,000 dark damage magic, and for 30 seconds, she increases her own attack and accuracy by 150%. The damage multiplier and attack are pretty nice, especially for how long the duration is. The accuracy is also really interesting. Not too many units have accuracy this high, so her niche is definitely going to be rare to outclass. She's kind of like Juno or Deadmaster in that way. This will pretty much guarantee that she's able to hit every high evasion boss in the game, which is a very strong ability to have. As for her super arts, it does a crazy 185,000 dark damage magic, and for 20 seconds, all allies ignore 100% of the enemy's defense, and human allies get 200% damage. The damage multiplier is definitely insanely high, it's going to make her output a ton of damage, and the defense ignore is definitely really good as well on stages that either have high crit resist or just negate crit to begin with. And the 200% damage for human allies is really strong as well, considering there are tons of great human units. This means that the 200% damage won't go to waste. Overall, it's definitely a super interesting art. For her passives, for the first 2 minutes of the quest, she increases her arts by 10 a second, and when she's above 80% or more HP, she increases her arts damage by 200%. She also increases her paralyzed resist by 100%, and she increases her damage by 20% to enemies below 30% HP. Her unique passive is insanely strong because she's giving herself 10 arts a second for the first 2 minutes, which makes her really self-sustaining, as well as a passive 200% arts damage. When combined with her super art, that means she'll have a 400% damage buff from herself alone. The paralysis resist is okay and the damage is pretty good as well. For her true weapon, it's a 5-star magic, it has a 45 second CT, does 8,000 dark damage magic, and for 10 seconds it increases own attack by 50% and reduces the enemy's magic resist by 30%. The effect isn't the greatest to be honest, it's fairly mid. But for the passives, when Miyu is using it, she gets 60% damage against non-giant bosses. It also has 5% magic resist. The passive 60% damage is actually really strong for Miyu because with her true weapon and all her passives in her kit, she's nearing 500% damage from herself alone, which is a ton of damage for a single unit, and that's not even considering other units that could buff her. In all though, Miyu's an interesting unit. She's definitely going to be the best high accuracy DPS alongside units like Juno and Deadmaster, but she'll be guaranteed to hit nearly every boss in the game from her huge 150% accuracy buff. On top of that, she's self-sufficient on her own, arts gauge wise, for the first 2 minutes. Her high 150% attack is also insanely good, especially when paired with her 200% arts damage and 200% human damage. Her true weapon and passives will mean she basically gets 500% damage from herself. From looks alone, I wouldn't doubt that she's going to give Shaltir a run for her level of damage. She's buffing herself a lot more than Shaltir does and has more team viability as well. Definitely a really good DPS. Moving on to Emiya. He's a water human. His slots are a 6-star support, 5-star defense, and a 4-star heal or support. Really interesting slots to be honest. Haven't really seen any slots like this, and he doesn't really need the 4-star support, but it would be helpful. For his skill, it has an 8-second CT and increases his arts by 30. In Unlimited Blade Works, it instead increases his arts by 60 instead. A really strong skill, it gives a base 3.75 arts a second, and in his Unlimited Blade Works mode, it instead gives him 7.5 arts a second. For his arts, for 10 seconds, it increases all allies' physical resist by 30% and allies get a 15,000 damage barrier. In Unlimited Blade Works, it changes from 10 to 20 seconds. This is an insanely strong art since it has a stupidly high amount of damage negation and it provides physical resist to the team. It's very similar to Sistina, Albedo, and Fatoria, although a lot closer to Fostoria since it provides damage resist as well as a shield. It wouldn't be crazy to say that this art alone can provide enough of a shield for the team to almost not need a taunt tank on harder stages. For his true art, it does 40,000 water damage physical, and for 20 seconds, it reduces the enemy's physical resist by 100%. In Unlimited Blade Works, the only difference is that the damage multiplier is doubled to 80,000 damage. This is a pretty strong true art. The 100% physical resist is really strong, enough to actually boost the entire team's physical damage by a lot. For his super art, he enters Unlimited Blade Works for 3 minutes. If this super art is used during Unlimited Blade Works, it does 160,000 water damage physical, and for 35 seconds he increases his own attack and damage by 200%. Looking at the rest of his kit, I would have never really expected this. For one, he's now the first crossover unit to have a mode similar to units like Vox or Reyes, but the fact that it does such a large amount of damage is wild, especially considering it seems as though he's a damage resist buffer. The 35 seconds for the 200% damage and attack is also wild, since that means he can have that buff active infinitely if he has competent arts generous on the team. For his passives, during Unlimited Blade Works, every 8 seconds he deals 10,000 water damage physical to all enemies. He increases his own paralyzed and freeze resist by 100% and increases all allies' damage resist by 30%. He also increases his damage to dark and light enemies by 35%. The passive damage to every enemy is very interesting, since that means he'll be constantly damaging every enemy regardless of if he's attacking or not. The freeze and paralyze resistance is really good as well. The passive 30% damage resist for all allies is overpowered actually. That coupled with his arts means that the team is getting 60% damage resist, which is crazy to consider he barely has to even work for that. The damage up to dark and light units is also fairly high as well, and will definitely make a difference in battle. For his true weapon, it's a 5-star defense and has a 35-second CT. For 10 seconds, it increases all allies' damage resist by 30%, and if Emiya uses it, the duration is increased to 20 seconds. Quite a bit of damage resist to be honest, although it's really going to shine on Emiya. The long duration on him will mean that it can be up fairly consistently with an equipped CT buffer like Star God Lisa. The passives are that if it's used by Emiya, he gets 100 arts at the start of the quest and 20% skill CT recovery. It also has a 5% heal recovery rate passive. This is a pretty strong passive as it'll allow him to get into Unlimited Blade Works faster, and the skill CT will mean he's getting 8.3 arts a second instead of his normal 7.5 while he's in Unlimited Blade Works, which is fairly good. Overall, Emiya is an insanely interesting character. His role seems to be a damage resist buffer while also putting out a ton of damage himself. His shield on art is also extremely potent, even if it's against a magic enemy. But on physical bosses, his passive damage resist for the team and on his art will mean that the entire team has 60% damage resist from him alone. That's insanely strong for any hard-hitting content, and what makes this so good is that rather than putting a unit devoted entirely to damage resist on hard stages, you can use Emiya, since he would do the same thing but be able to put out damage himself. So basically he's a really strong unit, damage resist buffer / DPS, but I wouldn't say he does as much damage as Miyu. But as a damage resist buffer, he puts out an insanely high amount of damage from what you would expect that they could do. And if you really did need him to, he could be your sole damager. For the equips, the first is a 5-star magic called Magical Sapphire. It has a 50-second CT and does 8,000 dark damage magic. For 10 seconds, it lowers the enemy's dark resist by 40% and an extra 20% if the user is human. This is basically a slightly stronger Nemesis Crow on humans and the same amount of dark resist as Luon's Shady Canopy. Nothing game-breaking, but it's pretty good. The next equip is the 5-star magic called Spear of Impaling Barbed Death. Quite the flattering name. It has a 75-second CT, does 8,000 dark damage magic, and for 15 seconds, increases own dark damage by 100% and increases accuracy by 50%. The high CT on this means that this will mostly be used for nukes, but in nukes needing high accuracy, this will be very good, especially on dark units since it has a really high amount of damage buff attached to it. The next equip is the 4-star defense, Miyu's Clothing. It has a 60-second CT, and for 20 seconds, it increases all allies' damage resist by 10%. It also increases light and dark resist by 20%. I don't really see this being useful considering it has a 60-second CT, And the fact that it's only really good against light and dark enemies makes it kind of weird. The uptime is fairly long too. Just in general, it's not really too great. The next equip is the 5-star defense, Ro Ias. I think that's how you say it. It has a 30-second CT, and for 20 seconds, it increases all allies' magic resist by 30%. If the user is human, it becomes 45% magic resist instead. Now, this is an insanely strong defense equip. The fact it has a base 30% magic resist for 20 seconds is already strong, but using it on a human buffs it to 45% magic resist instead. That's probably the highest amount of damage resist that lasts for 20 seconds. So far, this is probably the best equip and definitely a game changer. The next equip is a 5-star support called Emiya's Clothing. It has a 30-second CT and it increases all allies' arts by 20. For 12 seconds, it increases human allies' damage by 60%. Definitely a really strong buff. It gives slightly less arts than both Emperor and Morgod Fenn's true weapon, but it has a lot more damage to make up for that. Definitely a really nice pickup, maybe even a pity if you wanted, although I wouldn't really recommend that. The final equip is a farmable 5-star called Miyu's Clothes. It has a 40-second CT and does 6,000 dark damage magic. For 10 seconds, it increases magic damage by 50%, and if a human uses it, it increases arts by 2 a second. Not bad for a free equip, definitely worth farming either 1 or even 2 max LB. That's all there is for summonable stuff. For the rest of the new part, it's gonna be having new crests as well. They're all kind of meh, I won't really read them. I think the only one worth mentioning though is the Equip CT one, and that is if it's stackable with normal Equip CT. There's also going to be more Dream Evolution units that are coming with the new update. That's all there is to the update though. Good luck to anyone that's going to be summoning, and thanks for watching.